Throughout Jujutsu Kaisen, Mahito has proven to have one of the most unique innate techniques in idol transfiguration. And so, what if Izuku had Mahito's powers, had idol transfiguration? Before we begin, I would just like to ask you all to please like this video, comment, and subscribe. It really does help this channel out immensely. And without any further ado, enjoy. We start this what if off seeing a giant preschool classroom. Kids are running around, they're playing, they're laughing, they're having fun. And Izuku is no different. He's running around in his group of friends, one of them being Katsuki Bakugo. However, all of a sudden, he would stop, yelling out in joy, holding out the palms of his hands as a tiny tingly feeling is scattered throughout it. He can't be he's just so shocked and amazed. He's looking towards his hands. His quirk was awakening. Everyone stops what they're doing and goes and looks towards Bakugo, surrounding him in a giant preschool circle. Everyone's looking towards him, amazed, their eyes sparkling, not able to leave his palms. He was the first member of their entire class to awaken his quirk. However, Izuku, seeing this, would walk up to his best friend, patting him on the back. "That's awesome, Bakugo. Now we can be heroes together," he would say, holding his fist out in front of his face. And in doing so, all of a sudden, Izuku's hands would begin to glow, a purplish glow. He looks towards it, shocked. His energy was spiraling through his hands, and now, almost instantly, he could see souls of every single member of that classroom. He looks around towards the souls, an amazing look on his face. He can't believe it. His quirk had just activated at almost the same time as his best friend. And as Izuku looks towards one of the souls, reaching out, he realizes that he can grab it, that he can change and manipulate it. And completely blinded by this newfound amazement in his own quirk, Izuku begins to pull on the strings of one of his friend's souls right next to him, reshaping his soul. The kid begins to scream, and this screams, the cries in pain burst Izuku out of his haze. He instantly shakes his vision back to normal and looks towards the boy that he had just touched the soul of, realizing that this kid looked nothing like how he was before. Instantly, Izuku would get nervous, wondering, what did I do? What did I do? The kid would try and plead with him to put it back through pain and agony, and tears fall from his face. But Izuku couldn't. He would go back, his hands glowing again, manipulating the person's soul, trying to put it back, but everything he did would just make it worse. Nothing he could do would put that little boy's soul back together. And as the kid would scream even more, eventually he would fall down to the ground, his face slamming into the carpet below him with a thud, blood pooling around him. Everyone in the class screams in horror. The teacher lost for words. She looks towards Izuku, instantly yelling for all of the students to get back away from Izuku. He's dangerous. He can't be messed with, she would think to herself, yelling for all her students to back up. And as Izuku sits there, tears now beginning to fall out his eyes, he would look back towards his teacher and back towards his once friend, the now body of it, at least, picking it up, holding it. "Please, please come back," he would say, tears falling, the teacher guiding everybody outside the classroom. From there, we would see the teacher shut and lock the door. There were locks on the doors for a reason, not only to keep people out, but to keep some people in. There, of course, being in a world full of superpowers, eventually someone was going to unlock an ability that was dangerous for those around him. And of course, when you unlock quirks at such a young age, this was bound to happen. And so the teacher would rush, running to the principal's office, having another teacher watch her students, rushing to the principal's office, demanding that they call the pro heroes nearby. They needed someone to come take care of Izuku. and they would call the pro heroes as fast as they could, dialing the number, calling them, pleading with them to get there as soon as possible. And of course, being pro heroes, they would arrive wanting to take care of the young boy. This was a high publicity moment. I mean, getting to help a child feel better after, helping a child dealing with their quirk, this was amazing. But they had no idea what was in store. They would walk through the door of the classroom as the teacher would unlock it, holding her nose in disgust, smelling the strong smell of iron from the blood of the boy. They would walk in instantly, their faces dropping, seeing the contorted mess that was once a little child. They would walk up to Izuku, asking him, "Son, are you alright?" The pro hero would say, reaching out his arm, grabbing hold of Izuku's shoulder. Izuku would look back towards him, a pleading look on his face as if telling him to go away. Izuku activating his quirk now would say, "Go away, go away," yelling at him, tears falling down his face. Because of how the teacher acted, Izuku felt in that very moment like a monster. And if he had done this to someone that was close to him, what could he do to someone else? And as he's yelling, "Go away," he goes pushing back, using his cursed energy, trying to push the pro hero away, but ends up grabbing hold of the soul, throwing it back, causing the person to contort once again, their chest pulling out forward before exploding. The pro hero falling down to the ground in a pool of his own blood, just like the young boy had. And as Izuku witnesses this again, the pro hero's sidekick looking on in a horror. "Kid, just calm down. Just calm down," he would say, backing up slowly as Izuku would turn towards him. "See, I can't control it," he would say, tears pooling out, his breaths heavy and shaky. However, by this time, his mother had arrived at the school, hearing news of the attack. She had no idea that her own son was the one who had done so. And as she would walk in, she would see the bloody and brutish scene surrounding her child. She would walk up to Izuku, holding out her hand. "Izuku, honey, it's okay," she would say. "Please, just calm down. Mommy's here," she would say, holding him, grabbing hold of his hand, bringing him in for a great big tight hug, carrying him out of the classroom, away from the entire scene. From here, we would see the heroes put quirk-canceling handcuffs on Izuku's small, tiny wrists, where he would then be placed in the back of a police car, carted off to an interrogation room. Although Izuku was only 4 years old, they still had to treat this to the best of their ability. They had to find out what was happening and what had happened. And so, cutting forward, we would see an interrogator sitting across from Izuku, his mother sitting right next to him. "So, Izuku, boy, why don't you go ahead and tell me what had happened in that classroom?" I saw my best friend Bakugo. He unlocked his quirk, and then he would begin breathing heavier and heavier, hiccups escaping from his mouth, reliving that moment where he killed 2 people, one of them, of course, being a pro hero, breathing heavy over and over again. He couldn't believe what he had done, what he had accomplished. And as he stood there, the interrogator would look towards his mother as Inka would place her palm on Izuku's. "It's okay, Izuku. You're not in any trouble. Just tell him what had happened," Izuku would say, breathing heavily, nodding his head, looking back towards him. And then I could see my friend something. It was a blob, and I reached out and I grabbed it, and then that's what happened. He would look towards the interrogator nodding his head, looking back towards Izuku. "I see. Okay. I'll make note of this. For now, though, Izuku, you have to stay in our juvie facilities. I know you're still so young, but it's just a precaution." he would say, looking back towards Inko as she would nod her head, leaving Izuku with the police, driving back home. She cried and sobbed in her car, driving back to her house. She couldn't believe it. Her little Izuku was in jail, only at the ripe age of 4. And from here, we would see Izuku have pretty much no punishment be placed on him. Of course, they would have someone go and tell Izuku that he can't use his quirk out in public and can't use it as he could kill people. And not only that, for the first couple of months after, they would have someone watching Izuku, making sure that he wasn't using his quirk. However, that was only the legal side of the coin. There was still a civil side, and the boy's parents that Izuku had ultimately killed were not very pleased, naturally, with the death of their son, and so they sued the Midoriyas into oblivion, so much so that Hisashi left the family completely, divorcing Inko, leaving Inko and Izuku alone to fend for themselves. And because of that, Izuku would have a much more rough childhood than normal. Him and his mother could stay in the apartment they were in. They already weren't living in a very nice area, but still they were basically running paycheck to paycheck. And if Izuku had any more of his accidents, it would be even worse. And so from that day forward, Izuku would be scared. He would be treated poorly, treated like a villain, much like how in the regular timeline he was called Deku. People instead would call him villain, call him freak. No one would forget what he had done all those years ago. And so Izuku, just wanting to become a hero, wanting to prove himself, would think in his mind. He would tell himself over and over again, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to become what they want me to be. I'm going to be a hero through and through, and that's that. He would think to himself over and over again. Every day after school, he would rush home, grabbing hold of his journals and writing down so many different types of heroes and their costumes, their abilities, their weaknesses, everything. And because of that, he had sort of a mental note of all the heroes within the surrounding area. He loved them. He loved everything that had to do with heroes. Most importantly, though, would be All Might, his favorite hero. And so we would cut forward all the way up until the last day of middle school for Izuku. We would see him walking in with a smile. Every day he tried to be positive, and today was no different. Walking in, he would sit down at his desk, opening his journal and beginning to doodle at one of the many hero mock-ups that he had made for himself. As he's making it, we would see Bakugo walk in. What used to be his best friend was now one of his biggest bullies. He would walk in, staring down daggers towards Izuku before slamming an explosion right onto his desk. "What do you got here, villain?" he would say, looking down towards Izuku's journal. "Trying to be a hero, I suppose? Don't even bother, Izuku. You're just gonna muddy up the water at the UA entrance exam anyway. Ugh, people like you make me sick," he would say, looking down towards Izuku, a disgusted look on his face, as Izuku would just look up. "Really, Bakugo? I'm trying my best here. Just because of something that happened years ago, you continue to torment me for it. Get over yourself," he would say, shaking his head as Bakugo would yell, "What's that?" reaching back his hand about to send an explosion right towards Izuku. But right at that very moment, the teacher would walk in. "Settle down, class, settle down," he would say, his voice booming and echoing across the entire room. "Alright, since we just so happens to be the last day of school, or middle school for most of you, why don't we go ahead and share our future plans, Why don't we? Alright, who wants to go first? Yes, the teacher would look scanning across the room before his eyes would land on Bakugo. "Yes, Bakugo, why don't you go first?" He would stand up onto his desk, holding out his palm, sending an explosion off. I'm gonna become the #1 hero, he would say, his voice determined as ever, looking towards the teacher. That's wonderful, Bakugo, the teacher would say, laughing, before he would then sit down. All right, anybody else have what they want to do? Oh, Izuku would say, shifting his focus, his hand held high now. Yes, Izuku. I'm gonna become a hero too, he would say, his voice similarly determined, but there was still a little bit of shakiness, uneasiness in that. The teacher would nod his head. I believe that is very plausible for you, Izuku, trying not to break Izuku's spirits, but almost instantly after he would say that, the entire class would erupt in laughter. Everybody laughing at Izuku, calling him, sneering names at him. What, you and your villain quirk? Oh please, you could never be a hero. Never, they would say, sneering and spitting their words to Izuku, eventually a spitball hitting him in the back of his head. Holding it down, he would pull it out of his long green hair, looking at it, before crumpling it up in his hand, thinking to himself, gritting to his teeth, how he'll show all of them that he is a hero. And so from here the bell would ring, Izuku standing up, but all of a sudden something would stop him. Bakugo would hold out his hand, grabbing hold of Izuku's journal. Where do you think you're going, villain? He would say, holding out the journal, flipping through the pages. Wow, this is quite the fine work you got here. It'd be a shame if, someone were to ruin it. He would say, tossing back the journal to one of his friends, one of his lackeys, as they would then laugh, holding up the journal, beginning to tear at the seams of some of the pages. Izuku would yell, no, don't, he would say, holding out his hand, but it was too late. The villains would begin the goons would begin throwing it back and forth, playing a game of monkey in the middle with Izuku, toying with him. Each and every throw going right over Izuku's head. He could do nothing but stand there and plead with them not to destroy his journal. And eventually, they would laugh, running out of the classroom, Izuku forced to follow them. He would rush towards them, running and running, until finally we would see them burst through the roof access doors. They would hold out the book, holding it over the edge, over the fence, as Izuku would yell, stop, please, please, I'll do anything, he would say, where Bakugo would then walk up to him. That's more like it. Know your place, villain. And if you'll do anything, why don't you go ahead and kneel down before me. Tell me what you are. No, I couldn't, Izuku would say, glaring towards Bakugo, but Bakugo would snap his fingers. The goon holding out the notebook over, extending his arm even further past the gate over, signifying that he was about to drop it, before Izuku would shake his head. Fine, fine. Staring up towards Bakugo, glaring up, Bakugo would laugh. Watch how you look at me, freak. Before he would then smirk. What are you, Izuku Midoriya? I'm a villain, he would say, breathing heavily. He couldn't believe it. He really had just said that. That's more like it. Bakugo would then snap his fingers, and the lackey would drop the notebook over the edge into a koi pond below. Izuku would yell, rushing forward, grabbing hold of the gate, shaking it, a tear falling from his eye, his fist slamming into it. You said you wouldn't, Izuku would say, as he would then laugh, shrugging his shoulders. I didn't promise you anything. Besides, villains can't be made deals with. Him and his lackeys would laugh, walking out of the roof, walking down the steps out of the building. Izuku would shake his head, clearing it, before walking down the same steps, walking over to the koi pond and fishing his journal out of the water. He would stare down towards it, a small few tears falling from his eyes, hitting the already water-soaked pages. Bakugo, how is it that you're not a villain? How are you heroic? And I'm the villain. I'm the freak. Just a bully, Izuku would say, tisking, gritting his teeth in anger before beginning to walk back to his house. From here, we would see Izuku walk under that same famous overpass when, all of a sudden, the sludge villain would appear. He would burst open through the manhole cover, staring on towards Izuku with a maniacal look on his face, staring towards the boy. Ah, perfect. My next vessel, he would say, looking towards Izuku with a malicious face, sneering towards him. I can't wait to be inside you, he would say. Izuku would look towards him, shocked and disgusted by what he was saying. Please don't, Izuku would say, looking towards him with a pleading glance. I don't want to have to do this. You can still get out alive, he would say, but the sludge villain would just laugh. Oh, please. I'm not the one to be bargained with. You should be the one trying to run away. You're the one on life or death. On death row, I suppose. Izuku shaking his head once more. Please, just leave. But it was too late. The sludge villain would begin laughing, jumping towards Izuku and his body, jumping towards him, laughing maniacally. He would reach his sludge, goopy tendrils, trying to grab hold of Izuku, but Izuku was dodging it, dodging every single tendril with ease before finally activating his cursed energy, activating idle transfiguration. He would reach out, grabbing hold of the sludge villain's soul, manipulating it, twisting it, and contorting it, where he would then remove his quirk, just like how Mahito can remove heavenly restriction, or just like how Mahito can remove heavenly restrictions, he can remove the quirks from someone's soul. He would see it within their soul, the sludge, taking out that aspect. Although Izuku hadn't really realized it due to the desperation he was in, he had just removed the sludge villain's quirk. And so removing it, the sludge villain would begin falling down to the ground. Now human, he would stare up, looking at his body, completely naked. He would stare towards Izuku. What the hell did you do to me, kid? Rushing in, going in, trying to slam a punch at him. And Izuku would let him. The fist connecting with Izuku's cheek, he would look towards the man. Are you done? Please, just leave. I don't want to have to continue this. But the man wouldn't. He would yell at him, tears streaming down his face. His entire life was a lie now. He was no longer sludge. He was normal. And he would continue this, trying to send punch after punch at Izuku until Izuku had enough, reshaping the sludge villain's soul again, moving and contorting the flesh around his body before he would pop like a water balloon. Izuku, looking towards him, he would fall down to his knees in a pool of the sludge villain's blood, holding it in his hands as it would drip off. He would squeeze his hands into a fist, tears falling down his face as he would slam his fist over and over again into the puddle. Heroes don't kill. And yet he was just forced to, slamming, tears falling equally down into the puddle, rippling off as his hand would begin continuing to slam into it. He would slam it so hard, punching the concrete, the cement below, the road, until his fingers would begin to break, the bones pulling out of his palms, pulling out of his skin. Izuku would look up towards it, tears fully streaming down his face as he would yell an agonizing scream echoing across the underpass, holding out his hand before he would reshape his soul, repairing his fingers then and there. Breathing heavily until All Might would appear, jumping out of the manhole cover. He would look over towards Izuku with almost a questioning look on his face. "Hey, kid, you wouldn't have happened to see a man made of sludge around, have you?" Izuku knew he couldn't admit it. He knew this wasn't the right time. It was still a crime to kill, even if they were a villain, and he didn't want to have to deal with that, especially so close to the UA entrance exam. However, All Might would all of a sudden recognize him, and he would realize Izuku was sitting in a pool of blood. "Wait, aren't you that boy that killed the pro hero and one of his classmates 10 years ago?" "Yeah, you are. Why are you covered in blood? You didn't..." "No," he would say, realizing it almost like something had clicked in his mind. He would get ready, preparing, cocking his fists, but Izuku would hold up his hands, shaking them violently. "Please, please, All Might, please. I didn't mean to. He came after me. I had no choice." All Might would look towards him, glaring down. "So there's another victim to your toll. I thought after 10 years you would have learned your lesson, boy. Even though he was a villain, you still had no right to kill him. He was trying to kill me. There's ways of doing things, son. I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. I know, I shouldn't have," he would say, looking back up towards All Might. He knew he couldn't argue backtalk to his favorite pro hero, and as he would look up to him, All Might would then shake his head, looking down towards the pool of blood, putting a hand on his shoulder, asking him, "Well, are you all right, son?" Izuku nodding his head, "Yeah, I am." "All right, then. So, you're saying it was in self-defense?" "Yeah. All right. Just this once, I'll let you go. But I don't ever want to see you again." "What?" "Look, kid, you're nothing but trouble, especially with your quirk, and it is dangerous. Just do society a favor and get an office job or something. Maybe even a police officer where you don't have to use your quirk." "What? Are you saying I can't be a hero?" "I'm not saying can't, boy. I'm just saying you shouldn't. For the best of everybody else around you." Izuku would look up towards All Might, completely shocked. The person he had idolized since the beginning was staring him directly in the eyes and telling him his dreams shouldn't happen, shouldn't be fulfilled. And as he would stand there, All Might would pat Izuku on the back, saying, "Attaboy," before jumping off. Izuku standing there, bloodied and just devastated, completely, his eyes lacking emotion. He would walk home as clouds would begin forming above him, rain falling down, hitting Izuku like a bullet, each and every drop soaking Izuku even more as he would finally make it home, soaking wet. As he would walk through the door, his mother would ask him what had happened. Dried blood stained his clothes, but Izuku had nothing to say. He would look over towards his mother, shaking his head. Nothing, Mom. Nothing." His eyes devoid of any and all emotion as he would then walk into his room. There was still one thing holding Izuku together, keeping him there, keeping him sane, and that just so happened to be the UA entrance exam. He still had a chance to become a hero. He could use his energy. He didn't have to reshape souls to configure them. He didn't have to do that. He could use his energy as a quirk. It was still powerful in its own way. Izuku would think to himself as he sat at his desk thinking, "Yeah, maybe I just shouldn't use the main power of my quirk. Maybe I just shouldn't." thinking again and again before deciding to go to bed. From here, we would cut over to see Izuku training at Daeguba Beach, where there was trash after trash. He would train over and over again, and eventually, because of this being the beach that All Might had brought him to in the main timeline, he would run into Small Might. Small Might would see Izuku training, using his quirk on all of the metal, using it to punch divots and craters into old fridges, thinking to himself, maybe, just maybe, he was wrong about this kid. Maybe there's something to him. Maybe he was determined enough to be a hero. And so, from here, we would see 10 months pass, Izuku having his training go and be successful, walking in to the UA entrance exam confident and ready to succeed. As he would sit down in the giant dark auditorium, eventually Present Mike would walk up to him, handing him a paper. He would look down towards it, figuring that this was the written portion, as he would then fly through it, writing down all the answers at lightning speed. This was a cakewalk for Izuku. All those years without any friends had left him with time to train his quirk and time to train his intellect as well. And so, as Izuku is seen doing all of this, eventually the timer would end and Izuku would hand in the exam, a smirk on his face. He was confident. However, this would change when it became time for the UA Hero exam. As he would walk into the dark corridor waiting, jumping around before the doors would begin opening, he would smirk, jumping forward, using his quirk, using his cursed energy, getting in front of everyone before he would place cursed energy around his fists, slamming punch after punch into as many robots as he could, tallying right around 24 points or so before something would happen. As Izuku was destroying a 3-point robot, Bakugo would recognize him. After he had just finished exploding a robot, he would turn his head, finding that familiar mop of green hair. He would march over to Izuku, yelling at him, "What do you think you're doing here, freak?" he would say, pointing towards Izuku, pointing in his face. "I told you, don't even think about coming here. You admitted it yourself. You're a villain. So what are you doing at the hero exams?" "Bakugo, you made me say that, and you still didn't even follow your end of the deal. I have every right to be here as much as you do," Izuku would say, pointing his finger right into Bakugo's chest. But Bakugo would then just laugh, smacking Izuku's hand away from him. "Don't touch me, freak. I don't want you to do what you did to him all those years ago." "Ugh, you disgust me," he would say. By now, a crowd had formed, many of them beginning to realize what had happened. Although it was slightly common for kids to injure people with their quirks while activating it, it was almost unheard of for them to get killed. And so it had made national news coverage, and many people started to realize that Izuku was that 4-year-old. And as they stood there, they would all look towards Izuku, many of them pulling away, looking towards him with disgust. They couldn't believe it. What was he doing here? He had killed someone already. Heroes don't kill. Of course they don't. They would look towards Izuku, freakish faces written all over them, as Izuku's mind would begin swirling with all sorts of thoughts. He couldn't believe it. Cutting up, we would see all of the pro heroes that work at UA sitting in the observation booth, many of them looking back and forth at all of the students participating before their eyes would land on Izuku Midoriya. "That kid right there, green hair, zoom in on him," Aizawa would say, as the computer would. "He looks strangely familiar. Do we have his file?" "Yeah, it's right here," Midnight would say, handing it over to Aizawa as he would then take a look at it. "This kid, He's that boy, isn't he? Yes, he is, Nezu would say, a solemn expression on his face, having no words to say. I wasn't sure if we should let him here, due to the highly dangerous nature of his quirk, but I figured it's fair to give him a decent shot, right? Well, yeah, I guess so, Aizawa would say, responding back to Nezu, as he would then look over towards Izuku again. This is where Bakugo would confront him, everyone surrounding him, as Aizawa would ask Nezu to take a look at this. They would look up, seeing everyone surrounding Izuku staring on towards him with disgust, and Izuku just standing there, unsure of what to do. It appears maybe my decision was the wrong one, Nezu would say once more, before Aizawa would nod his head, crossing Izuku's picture out with a red marker. No matter how strong or capable he may be, I guess this is one of those rare times where it's better for the class just to not have him there at all. I suppose you're right, Nezu. We'll see how this plays out, won't we? He would say with a smile, looking back towards the rat dog principal of UA, before we would cut back to see Izuku, the timer now blaring that the entrance exam had completed. Izuku, with only 20 points, looked saddened. Surely he could have had a lot more than 24 with the timer ending, and if no one had interrupted him like Bakugo so rudely had. And so he would start making his way back to his house. Upon arriving there, his mother would be sitting there waiting for him, asking him eagerly, "Izuku, how was the entrance exam? How was it, sweetie?" She would ask him with a smile on her face. It was eh, he would say, responding to her. I really felt like I could have done better, but Bakugo called me a freak, and then everyone surrounded me and recognized me. Oh, I see. Well, don't worry about that, because soon enough you'll be accepted, and you'll be one of their friends, and you're going to show them you're a lot more than just that incident that happened 10 years ago. I sure hope you're right, Mom, Izuku would say, his face lifting, looking back up towards her, before he would walk back to his room, beginning to read one of his many completed hero journals. From there, we would cut forward 2 weeks' time. Izuku would be eagerly awaiting the letter before his mother would rush through the door, holding it outstretched in her hand. Izuku, it's here, she would say, outstretching the letter over to Izuku. He would nod his head, thanking her for giving it to him, before he would begin to tear it open. He would look at it down at the palm of his hand and would begin reading it. Dear Izuku Midoriya, unfortunately, you have not been accepted for acceptance into UA School of Heroes. The letter would drop out of Izuku's hands, floating down to the ground, his hands beginning to shake violently before they would ball up into fists. His mother would look over towards Izuku. Izuku, it's okay, she would say, reaching down to put a hand on Izuku's back, but he would slap it away. No, it's not okay. All my life, I've been defined by one moment, and even now, I have been. All Might told me not to become a hero. I've blessed with this ability, or cursed with it, and now I can't even use it to the extent that I should be able to. I can't save people with it to make up for my sins, to make up for the deeds that I've done in my past. I can't believe this, Izuku would say once more, before his mother would try to tell him to try and console him, but he would just point to the door. Just leave. Please. Just go. His mother would nod her head, watching as he would sit there, writhing in his own anger. He would go back, laying down in his bed, staring up towards the ceiling. He'd didn't know what to do, staring up at it as the night would pass. Hours and hours, minutes after minutes would pass with Izuku still wide awake, thinking about all that had happened. And because he wasn't able to fall asleep, he would end up getting up, standing up from his bed. It is now 3 a.m. He'd walk over to his window, opening it, sneaking out of his home. He'd begin to walk the streets of the surrounding area, walking them, his hands in his pockets, staring up to the full beaming moon, the moonlight extending across the street, staring up towards it as he would continue walking. However, all of a sudden, he would hear shuffling from behind him before an object would poke into his back. He would turn around, staring on, looking at what was behind him. Someone wearing a dark ski mask was pointing a weapon into Izuku's back. Don't even think about turning around, kid. Really, what made you come out here? Oh, please. You're just a kid. Why are you out at 3 a.m. and not at your mommy and daddy's house? Probably just some prissy little rich kid that doesn't know any better. Come on, fork over your wallet. Izuku would again tell this man the exact same thing he had told the sludge villain. He didn't like killing. And as he stood there, he didn't want to do this to the man. But he had to. Please, lower your weapon. Don't make me do this. The man would look towards him, laughing. Oh, please. I know your quirk's probably something weak. You're only a kid. Besides, I have a gun trained to your back. What do you think you're gonna do about that? You still have time. You don't have to kill me. I don't have to kill you. Don't kid yourself. Just hand over your wallet already, kid. Come on, he would say, pointing the gun right deep into Izuku's back, shoving it into it as Izuku would finally have enough. He would duck down, reaching his wrist around, grabbing hold of the robber's body, cursed energy expelling from Izuku's hands, twisting and reshaping the robber's soul. The robber would begin screaming in agony and in pain, yelling out as he would be contorted and twisted, turning into a giant person, a giant freak, a monster that was blue and purple, as he would be sitting there wreathing in his own pain. Eventually, Izuku would kill him to put him out of his misery. Once again, there was blood on Izuku's hands. Although he told himself that he had to kill in these situations, he had to do it. If he didn't kill then, he would be killed by them. Although that wasn't right. That wasn't right at all. There was always a way around killing, especially in the matter of the sludge villain and this common thug. Izuku easily could have incapacitated him using just his cursed energy alone. But something told Izuku, something made him want to use his ability. Because all those years where he was told not to use it, this was payback. This was him being able to do it. And as he stood there, though, eventually someone would see him. A pro hero standing atop a dark building top. He would stare down towards Izuku, looking at him. Kid, you really can't get yourself out of trouble, can you? He would say, jumping down, using his scarf. We now see that it is Aizawa, what could have been Izuku's homeroom teacher at UA, using his scarf, trying to stop Izuku. But it didn't work. As he would wrap his scarf around Izuku's body, he would use his idol transfiguration on himself, distorting his own body into what was basically looking like a snake, slithering out of the restraints, the scarf that Aizawa had trained on him. Aizawa would look back towards Izuku. Kid, just stop. Stop this already. It was clearly self-defense, but you need to come with me. No, Izuku would say, his voice ringing out across the alleyway. I'm not going with anybody anymore. I'm done being what everybody has told me to be. No, it's time for me to be me, he would say, twisting his arm, reshaping it, shape-shifting it into the likes of a blade, slashing down towards Aizawa, cutting through Aizawa's scarf. Aizawa would jump back, looking towards Izuku, shocked, his scarf now falling off from around his neck. He would go to erase Izuku's quirk, but Izuku was too fast, shape-shifting his legs into the legs of a cheetah, allowing him to sprint off as fast as he could, and Aizawa not able to catch him. Izuku had known who Aizawa was. Because of his hero journals, he knew very well, and because of this, on top of that, he knew Aizawa's weaknesses, and so he was able to extort them with ease. However, as he was running back home, he knew it was only a matter of time until they found out and where he was. Running from a hero was basically the same as running from the police. It was a crime. It was resisting arrest. And so he knew there was only a matter of time before the police and heroes came knocking on his door, especially because of his prior incidents. And so rushing back to his home, he would go jumping through his window, eagerly or not eagerly, but quickly writing down a note as fast as he could, leaving it for his mother. He knew she would be worried sick, but at the same time, he knew he couldn't stay there. The heroes would be on his tail any minute now. And so he would begin packing up a small few amounts of clothes and would leave, forced to leave home. And from here, we would cut forward around 30 minutes. Aizawa had made it back to his agency, reported it to the police, and told them already. Because of Izuku already being on file, they went straight to his house, knocking on the door, slamming on it as Inko would sleepily get up. She would look through the peephole, wondering who was banging on her door at 4 a.m. before seeing the police and a pro-hero standing outside. She would look shocked, opening up the door, asking them what was wrong. But this is where she would find out. The pro-hero walking in, looking towards Inko. Miss Midoriya, I know this may sound like a shock to you, but your son, Izuku, was involved in a murder or homicide incident, and then fought the pro-hero Eraserhead, and got away. And we were hoping that maybe he would be here, or you could give us some clues as to where he was. Inko would look shocked, her face dropping, staring up towards them. No, that can't be right. A false sense of security hidden behind her smile. She would look up towards the police. That's just not possible. Izuku, he's still in bed. He's sleeping. Alright? He was rejected from UA today. He was trying to become a hero. He wouldn't kill someone, especially not after the incident. The police would nod their heads before walking in, inviting themselves into the home. Do you mind if we take a look around, Miss Midoriya? Sure, she would say, guiding them throughout the house before it was finally time to walk into Izuku's room. They would open up his bedroom door as it would creak open. They would look around before seeing that there was no Izuku. All that was left was a note. Inko picking the crinkled up piece of paper, beginning to read it. Dear Mom, I'm sorry. I made a mistake and now I'm gonna have to live with it. I hope you can forgive me. Goodbye. Inko would hold her mouth, clutching it as she would begin hyperventilating, having a panic attack, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't believe it. Her son, her one and only son, was gone. Breathing heavily over and over again, the cops would rub her back. It's okay, Miss Midoriya. We know this is a lot to handle, but if you could please sit down and answer a few of our questions, that would be great. Inko would shakily nod her head, walking them back into the kitchen where they would sit down and they would question her, wondering if there were any places that possibly maybe Izuku would have gone. But Inko knew none, except for the one place he would always go to train, Daigoba Beach. They would nod their heads, thanking her for her time before walking back out. Inko didn't care if she was ratting on her own son. All she wanted was that her son would come back to her. And so she would tell the police anything that they needed to know. And because of that, she told them where Izuku possibly would be staying. And so that is what she would do. And from there, the cops would rush over to Daigoba Beach, trying that they would get there in time, knowing that it was only a few moments that they had before Izuku could possibly disappear forever. And so upon reaching there, they would see a small campfire. This, of course, belonging to Izuku. The police would rush in, loading their weapons at the same time, pointing them, directing them towards Izuku, as he would then stand up, his eyes wide. Please, I have nothing on me, he would say, raising his hands up into the air. Izuku Midoriya, you are under arrest, they would say, telling him to turn around and walk towards them. But he wasn't going to. He would shake his head no, staring toward them with cold, empty eyes. Kid, just do this. You don't want to do something you're gonna regret. No, I'm not the one to be bargained with. You don't want to do something you're gonna regret, Izuku would say, as the cops would then laugh. Oh please, what could you possibly do? Before all of a sudden, Izuku would activate his curtain, a technique that he had been working on. Black barrier or black fog almost would begin seeping down from the sky, surrounding all of the police officers. They would look towards Izuku, staring towards him. I told you, he would say, staring on towards them, as they would then cock and load their weapons again, pointing them, demanding Izuku take away his quirk, to stop using it. But it was too late. Izuku would grab a fistful of sand, throwing it towards the cops, ducking under a fridge, as they would then open fire onto Izuku, all of the bullets hitting into the fridge that he was ducking behind. Each and every bullet hitting it with a clink, as Izuku would be shocked. These people were trying to kill him over just nothing. He didn't even try to attack them. Sure, he attacked Aizawa, but that was just because he was trying to get away. He had done nothing wrong. And as he stood there, he realized there was no one in this world that was coming to help him. It was just him and him alone. And so he would leave, running away from where he was, using his curtain as a distraction, getting as far away from the cops as he could, rushing in to the surrounding forest where he wouldn't get caught. From here, we would cut forward, seeing Izuku sitting around a small campfire, roasting a rabbit that he had just caught. As soon as it was done cooking on the stick, Izuku would lift it up, bringing it back up towards his mouth, pulling off the tough, overcooked, and unseasoned rabbit meat. Ugh, he would say, spitting it out in disgust. I can't believe I have to live like this. I really do wonder what my life would be like if I never killed him. He would say, thinking back to that moment at the preschool before he would shake his head. No, I can't spend my time dwelling in the past, he would think to himself. Before we would see Izuku beginning to wander the forest, drifting aimlessly, before a couple of weeks would pass, realizing something. After all these weeks of being a bum, being a drifter, surviving out in the wilderness, he realized, maybe he killed people that were villains. Maybe he did that. And maybe that's just how his quirk is, how it's supposed to be. But that doesn't mean he can't be a hero in his own way. Thinking about this for a moment further, Izuku would nod his head. Yeah, that settles it. I'm still gonna be a hero, and I'm gonna do their job way better than they'll ever do it. He would think to himself right then and there, where we would see Izuku walk back into the city right at nighttime. This was where Izuku's story of being a vigilante would begin. We would see Izuku roaming the streets at night, not caring about getting caught. He knew there was very few heroes around that could even catch up to him, and even if they did, it was no use. He would walk the city, strolling it in confidence, before a scream would catch his ear. He would look up, wondering what that scream had happened to be, before a smile would right across his face. He would rush over, running over to where the scream was, before he would find a thug staring on towards a small woman standing at the end of an alleyway. She would plead with the man, "Please, sir, please, don't do it. Just please let me go, please," she would say, asking the man to let her go, but he would laugh, looking towards her. "You know I can't do that, pretty. Why don't you just sit still for me?" he would say, outstretching his hands maniacally. And this is where Izuku would step in. "That's enough," he would say, his voice echoing and booming across the alleyway. The man would turn, staring towards Izuku. "Oh, please, what do you think you're gonna do? You're just a kid." "Don't kid yourself," he would say, looking towards the man before reaching his hand out towards him. The man would jump, dodging around, slamming a fist into Izuku's stomach, but it didn't do anything. Izuku would grab hold of the man's throat, holding him up in the air, smiling towards him, a maniacal smile. All of a sudden, his friend, his buddy, would come rushing out from the side of the dumpster, holding a knife, going in to try and stab Izuku. But Izuku didn't let that happen. He would touch the freak's head, instantly reshaping the entire body of the man, causing him to shrink down into a shriveled up human size, a corpse, sitting there like he was some sort of cursed artifact. As Izuku would sit there, the man that he was holding up, holding the man's neck, squeezing it tighter, he would begin crying, terrified. "Oh, please. You're scared? A villain? A thug is scared of me? I can't believe this. Are you really scared?" Izuku would say, asking the man, and he would try with all his might to shake his head no. But he was lying. His soul was trembling in fear. Izuku would laugh for a moment. You're completely terrified. I can't believe this. You know what? I like you. I'll keep you alive for just a little bit longer, he would say before the woman would be told to leave. You, he would say, pointing towards her, you're free to go. Think of this as a gift from someone who's not afraid to do what the heroes are. Toodaloo, Izuku would say towards her before beginning to walk out of the alleyway, the person looking back towards Izuku before he would snap his fingers. You, come on, this way. I have an idea for you, he would say once more, walking the streets. Eventually, yet another thug would jump out from an alleyway holding a gun trained on Izuku and his lackey. Izuku would smile, kicking the man in his back. Well, don't be shy. Go ahead and give our friend here a hug, he would say, with the man looking back with shaky eyes towards Izuku. But Izuku didn't care. Well, come on. Do it. I wouldn't want to have to treat you the same way I treated your friends, now would I? I don't take kindly to villains like you, Izuku would say, his voice dampering, looking towards the man as he would nod his head, walking towards the thug in front of him. Step back! Don't take another step further, he would say, his voice stuttering, looking on at what he was confused by. He didn't understand what was happening in front of him. As each and every step, the person got closer and closer until finally a gunshot was heard. Izuku's friend that he had just made fell to the floor with a thump as Izuku would smile. Good. At least that death can't be pinned on me, now can it? Izuku would say, walking towards the other man, grabbing hold of his soul and the one who was just shot as his mouth was gargling, choking on the blood, holding out, combining the two souls together, causing a massive reaction, twisting them into a small cylinder-like shape. As Izuku would smile, holding it out, eventually he would end up getting spotted yet again by a pro hero. It was only a matter of time with all the commotion that he had caused, whether it was on a villain or a civilian after all. And so we would see a pro hero jump down, staring towards Izuku, their giant fists slamming into each other. Ugh, you villains disgust me, you'd say, cracking the fingers of his giant hands together. All right. Are you ready to face the wrath? Come on, come get some, he would say, outstretching his hands before Izuku would then laugh, tossing the tiny two souls that he had combined into the air, throwing it towards the hero, using body repel, the rejection of the two souls had together, causing a giant growth to appear, sending the pro hero flying backwards, a mouth almost biting, gnawing towards him. He would stare on in shock and horror, looking towards it before it would then dissipate in a pool of blood. What the hell was that? He would say, completely confused, looking on in horror. He had no idea what that thing was, and what it really was Izuku's distraction. He had managed to get away. And so, with Izuku now walking away from where he was, we would see him continuing to walk down the streets. The sun was beginning to rise. However, one final event was going to occur for Izuku. We would see Izuku walking around an alleyway in one of the worst parts of the city, where he would spot a bar. He would go to walk in, knowing that maybe there was other villains there that he could toy with and have fun with, but all of a sudden, he would stop at the door, hearing what they were talking about. He would listen intently on where he would then hear what they were talking about. So, Aoyama, you're telling me there's going to be a field trip to the unforeseen simulation joint in exactly 4 days' time, am I correct? Yes, Shigaraki, you are. In 4 days' time, Class 1A is going to be going to the USJ. Is that enough? Can I go now? He would say as Shigaraki would then laugh, patting Aoyama on the back. Yeah, you're free to go, Aoyama. You're free to go. So, for one, what should we do? Considering that now we have the location of Class 1A. What's our next step? We would hear Shigaraki talking with All For One over the TV as Izuku would place his ear to the door, listening, trying to find out every detail he could about what was going down. This is where we would find out Izuku had realized that Class 1A was going to be attacked by villains. Izuku, hearing this, would know he couldn't just sit there and let this happen. Although he had been rejected from this, he still had a duty to make. And so he would leave the city for the night, counting down the days, counting them until it was finally time. He had no idea where the USJ possibly could be, but he thought maybe he'd start with, the UA campus. And from here, we would see Izuku walking around the surroundings of the UA campus before a garage door would open, seeing a speeding bus pull off from the garage, speeding away in a direction. Izuku just barely managing to glimpse Bakugo's head of hair, realizing that this surely had to be Class 1A's bus. And so Izuku would begin following it, just barely keeping himself out of view, creating his arms into wings, flying throughout the air, flying through it until he would end up seeing the bus having been stopped. He was late after all. This was nowhere near the beginning of the USJ incident. As Izuku would fly down landing, he would try and look through any of the seams of the USJ, but he couldn't. He really couldn't see through it. It wasn't glass, it was some sort of foggy-like material, and he surely wasn't just gonna walk through the front doors. That would be almost suicide. It wasn't anything. He couldn't just go through those doors that easily without heroes noticing him. And so, as he would begin walking around, he would listen intently before explosions would begin heard echoing throughout the USJ, the entirety of it shaking over and over again. This is when Izuku would realize that this was it. The USJ was under attack. Izuku would jump in, bursting through the doors, looking around, seeing the League of Villains fighting every single person, every single member of Class 1A around, especially Aizawa. Izuku, seeing this, would rush down the steps, racing in before we would see Aizawa look and see Izuku in the corner of his eye. "Izuku? What are you doing here?" he would say before a punch would be thrown and land right across Aizawa's face, sending him flying backwards. Izuku had been a distraction. "You can't be. You're one of these villains," he would say as Izuku would tell him to shut up and fight. There's no time for that now. Villain after villain would be seen circling around Izuku and Aizawa. They would come in, rushing towards them, but Aizawa and Izuku would dodge each and every blow. Every time they would come swooping in, they would dodge. Izuku without the limits of being in a hero class or being a pro hero, would be able to kill them. As they would come in, he would reshape their souls, twisting their flesh and their bone and their matter all around, reshaping them, contorting and disfiguring them. As Aizawa was horrified by what Izuku was doing, but he knew that he had nothing he could do. He couldn't stop it at all. And so this would continue over and over again. Villain after villain would begin racing towards Izuku and Aizawa, trying with all their might to get at them. But eventually, Izuku had destroyed all of them. And even with Izuku's immensely powerful and almost disgusting ability, many villains even just turned around and decided not to. They decided this wasn't what they had planned. They weren't going to sit here and die in such a grotesque way. And so villain after villain would begin running away, running out of the USJ, not wanting to have to deal with Shigaraki or have to deal with Izuku. However, this wouldn't really matter. Shigaraki would smile, staring towards Izuku before his finger would be outstretched, pointing towards Izuku and Aizawa. Nomu, kill him. Kill that freak with the long green hair. Would you do that for me? The Nomu would screech, yelling out before it would rush forward, racing towards Izuku, going in, winding back its fist for a giant punch, but it wouldn't do anything. Izuku would dodge it with ease. He wasn't going to let this stop him whatsoever. The Nomu, coming crashing in once more, would send flurry of punches his way towards Izuku, but he would dodge it, even blocking some of it, grabbing one of the non-dead villains that were on the ground, injured from Aizawa, holding them up, contorting their soul to act almost like a human shield for himself, holding him up, blocking the Nomu's punches, each one sending shockwaves through the man's skin. But Izuku didn't care. He was having fun. He was alive. And so each and every punch coming Izuku's way, he would dodge it until finally he had enough, morphing his arm into a giant blade, slicing right through the half of the Nomu's body. It would screech in pain, falling down to the ground. However, it would be cut short. Izuku staring on, watching as the Nomu would begin regenerating. And right as he was regenerating, the heroes would arrive, the entirety of UA's teacher base. Slamming through the doors, they would look around, spotting Izuku fighting the Nomu. All Might would look on in shock, and so would the rest of the heroes. Why was he here? What was he doing fighting that bird thing? He had been declined from UA. There was no reason for him to be at the field trip at all, unless he just so happened to be a villain. They would race in, snipe, going to shoot him, but Izuku would spot them in the corner of his eye. He would look back, looking towards them before he would create his curtain. The black essence falling down towards the ground, escaping, covering Izuku and the Nomu and their fight. As this would be happening, Izuku would bar all of the UA teachers from getting in through his curtain. And so he would finish the Nomu off. Right as it was regenerating, he would grab hold of the Nomu's flesh and his soul, easily squeezing it, popping him like a blood balloon. As the curtain would then fall, Shigaraki would stare towards Izuku, yelling out, "No, no, you can't have done that. You won a freak," he would say, calling Izuku a freak once again, causing Izuku to get angry. He would take a step forward to launch himself towards Shigaraki, but right before All Might would come flying in, flailing down towards Izuku, sending a giant punch raining down towards him. As Izuku would see this, the punch flying and sending him across the USJ, Shigaraki would be confused, yelling at All Might, "Wait, is he not one of Class 1A? Who is he then?" Shigaraki would yell in anger and frustration. Someone that wasn't even a part of Class 1A had defeated the Nomu. And so, with Izuku now in a fight against All Might, he would try not to hurt him. He knew All Might was the symbol of peace. It was still his favorite hero, even if All Might told him he shouldn't be a hero. He didn't want to have to do that to All Might. He didn't want to have to kill him to reshape his soul. And so each and every fist thrown, every punch All Might sent flying Izuku's way, he would dodge it, pleading with All Might, telling him, "Please, All Might, please, I don't want to have to do this. Just let me be, let me go." But All Might would laugh. "Kid, you've done far too much damage for yourself and reputation now. This isn't like before. I can't just let you go." Izuku would look back up towards All Might, a pleading glance on his face, before he would realize it was over. All Might was going to try and catch him. And so, with that, we would see Izuku staring on towards All Might before he would put his hands up. "Do it. Arrest me." All Might would stop his onslaught in shock. He was not expecting whatsoever for Izuku to do this. And now he had. He had done it. He had let All Might capture him. This was completely out of the ordinary, especially for a villain. And so from here, we would cut forward, seeing Izuku get brought in for questioning. We'd see Izuku sitting across from All Might, quirk-canceling handcuffs on his wrists, as All Might would begin questioning Izuku, asking him why he had killed all of those villains, all the people he had, including the ones at the USJ, including the Nomu. Where Izuku would shrug his shoulders. I had to. Those people were just gonna get out on bail every single time because the justice system and heroes refused to do anything about it. And they were going to continue doing harm and kill innocent lives. That's not justice at all, Izuku would say, before All Might would shake his head, looking down towards him. "Boy, what you're describing isn't justice either. They have a right to a trial, and you have no right to take it from them. They weren't going to get a trial anyway. You were just going to keep letting them out," Izuku would say, looking back towards All Might as the interrogation would continue. Cutting, however, we would go to the League of Villains hideout, seeing the blue-haired Shigaraki staring on towards All for One's computer screen. "I'm telling you, Master, he wasn't a student at UA. He was just there and he fought with the Nomu and defeated it. If he's not a member of UA, and even All Might, the symbol of peace, he attacked him and arrested him. I think he's some sort of weird vigilante thing, sort of like Stain. Perhaps maybe we could bring him on our side. Maybe we should capture him," Shigaraki would say as All for One would look towards him. "If what you're saying is true, then maybe we should." "Alright, let's bring him in." Shigaraki would smile to himself, nodding his head, where we would then cut back to Izuku, a purple warp gate portal opening up behind his body, a hand with 4 fingers, the pinky held out, outstretching, grabbing hold of Izuku's neck, pulling him back into the portal. All Might would yell for Izuku to stop, but he had no idea. He had no control over what was happening. And so Izuku would get pulled right through the portal. He would look back, looking on towards Shigaraki, who was staring towards him with a smile on his face. "So, what's your name, boy? I saw you killed my Nomu, but then All Might attacked you. Why don't you tell me before I'm forced to kill you?" Izuku would roll his eyes, staring back towards Shigaraki, nodding his head. All right, he would say, before he would then tell him. He would tell him what had happened, telling him his whole story, how he was the boy that had killed someone in his own class, killed a pro hero on top of that, and had then basically gone rogue, become a vigilante. And that's why All Might attacked him, because he was technically a wanted criminal. Shigaraki would laugh at this. "You have every right to be a villain, kid," he would say towards Izuku, staring on towards him. "So, why don't you join us, huh? You do really have to repay the debt of killing my Nomu, you know." Izuku would look back towards Shigaraki before asking him, "And what if I don't? What if I don't join you?" And that is when Shigaraki would place his last finger down, the pinky, onto Izuku's neck as it would begin to decay. Izuku would nod his head, telling him, All right, I get it. Fine, I'll join you, but you have to tell me why you're a villain as well. Tell me your story." Shigaraki would laugh, laughing at Izuku before accepting what he had said. "All right, I'll tell you why I'm a villain. So, let's get into it," he would say once more before we would see Shigaraki explaining to Izuku as Izuku would fix his neck, repairing his soul. From here, we would see Shigaraki explaining to Izuku what had happened. He had killed his family with his decay quirk and then had basically been cast aside. And that was up until All for One had rescued him, had saved him, and shown him the flaws of the hero world. Shigaraki was labeled a villain because of his quirk, and All for One had saved him. Izuku would look towards Shigaraki, shocked at what different paths they had taken. Both of them held very, very many similarities between themselves. Both of them were labeled as villains growing up because of their quirks. However, one of them became a villain. The other, although was forced out of the hero world, was still trying with all his might to be a hero, to be someone people could look up to, that someone that would save others. However, that time seemed like it was coming to an end. Izuku would nod his head, thanking Shigaraki for telling him, where then we would cut forward a couple of weeks. Shigaraki and Izuku had both begun training together, Izuku hiding his full power and his abilities away from Shigaraki, knowing that he was no villain and he needed to be able to use them to their fullest advantage when the time came that he was going to leave. However, for now, we would see Shigaraki and Izuku sitting in a forest, staring up towards the sky. This spot here. In just about a month or so, Class 1A is going to be back right here, training their quirks. And that's when we're going to come in and kidnap someone. Some fiery kid that has the attitude of a villain. Oh, I can't wait, Shigaraki would say, laughing to himself as we would then cut forward that time. Izuku had gone up the ranks, gotten more trust within himself in the League of Villains. Shigaraki and All for One trusting Izuku more. His power already was villain-like, and as Izuku acted like it more and more, the trust would come naturally. And so from here, we would see Izuku, Shigaraki, Izuku, Dabi, Toga, Muscular, all of the Vanguard Action Squad ready for the attack on the training camp. We would see Izuku standing there, ready, his fists cocked and ready. He was waiting for the go-ahead as Kurogiri would then open a portal. Walking through it, Izuku would jump in, looking around, looking for any Class 1A students. He knew he didn't want to kill any of them, but he also had to make sure his covert operation within the League of Villains wasn't a bust. And so, as he would jump forward, looking around, realizing there was no one around, he would lower his guard, as Dabi would then place his hand on the tree, igniting the forest in his blue cremation flames. From here, we would see all of the villains running around, looking for kids to fight maniacally. They were villains after all. They had no reason to fight them. They were there looking for Bakugo. But that didn't really seem to matter to them. They were running around, fighting anyone they could. Izuku was looking for this kid as well, having got a description of his personality rather than looks, so he had no idea who it was. However, as Izuku was walking around, eventually he would run into Shoto Todoroki. Todoroki would look over towards Izuku, sending a barrage of ice right towards him as Izuku would dodge it, going in, dodging each and every attack before he would then rush in, using his cursed energy, not wanting to kill Todoroki, using his idol transfiguration. And so he would activate his cursed energy, not understanding that he had just done a black flash, slamming his punch right into Todoroki's body. Almost instantly, Izuku would be shocked. This feeling, it felt like he had the true essence of his soul within the palm of his hand for just a moment. He would stare down towards his hand, completely shocked at what he had just done, before looking back towards Todoroki with a smile on his face. This is awesome, he would say, Todoroki jumping back in, sending a torrent of fire barreling on towards Izuku and his body, but it wouldn't work. Izuku using yet another black flash, slamming it right into Todoroki's gut, sending him flying upward, blood spewing out of his mouth. Todoroki would look back towards Izuku, his gaze shaky. He was weakened. Looking back towards Izuku, walking shakily towards him, reaching out his hand, sending yet another torrent of fire before Izuku would finally understand it, using a third and final black flash, understanding the true essence of his soul, causing him to evolve right in his fight with Todoroki, feeling that freeing sense ripping off the top half of his face, revealing that instant spirit body of Distorted, the same one as Mahito had. And so, as Izuku would stand there, looking on, his face distorted, looking like a Nomu, we would see Todoroki staring on towards Izuku in horror. This was grotesque, it was disgusting, and as he would race in, sending fire barreling towards Izuku, it wouldn't work. Izuku's durability was off the chart, and as he stood there, fire after fire, ice after ice coming barreling towards him, each and every attack was no use for Todoroki. And from there, Izuku would laugh, jumping in, slicing, using the blade on his forearm to cut across Todoroki's cheek. He would jump backwards, staring towards Izuku, before he would jump right towards him, slamming a fist right into Todoroki's skull, sending him flying back into a tree trunk. He would hit his head on the back of it, instantly becoming concussed, falling down towards the ground, a shaky expression on his face, as Izuku would then hear the whistle. This was their sign. They had gotten who they wanted. Izuku, returning back to his normal form, would laugh, looking towards Todoroki before walking back towards the destined leave point, walking through the warp gate portal that Kurogiri had opened. From here, we would see Izuku walk down into the League of Villains bar, seeing the one and only Bakugo Katsuki tied up. Instantly, his face would drop, staring towards his childhood bully. Well, I'm not surprised it was you to try and turn you to the villain side, Izuku would say with a small chuckle and laugh, as we would see Bakugo sneer towards him. Ugh, I can't believe it. I was right all along about you. You were a villain, freak. I knew it, villain, Bakugo would say, sneering, spitting these words towards Izuku, as Izuku would laugh, telling Bakugo to calm down. No one else was in the room at the time but Izuku, and he would look towards Bakugo. I'm purely here to just learn, Bakugo. Nothing else. I'll have you know I haven't really done anything villainous since, fighting Todoroki, but that's just because he made me. You'll pay for this, Bakugo would say, sneering towards Izuku once more as Izuku would laugh, walking away. From here, however, we would see Izuku beginning to talk with Shigaraki. Over the past couple of months, their friendship had really started to grow. They were becoming better and better friends. Maybe it was because of their similar background. Maybe it was because of their similar quirks being labeled as villainous. But who knows, they were becoming better and better friends. And because of this, Izuku didn't want to see Shigaraki fall, become the ultimate villain like All for One had planned. And so Izuku would end up dropping sort of hints, soft launching, that Todoroki didn't have to be a villain. Maybe he could turn his life around, but it wasn't going very steady. It was taking quite a long time. However, Izuku's plan was going to have to wait. The heroes were on the prowl. Their time had come. They were coming in to rescue Bakugo Katsuki. And so we would hear it, rumbling occurring before Mount Lady would rush in, kicking through the roof of the League of Villains hideout. Kamui Woods using his wood, extending out, grabbing hold of all of the villains, holding them there. Where Izuku would walk back into the room, seeing all of his fake friends, his League of Villains counterparts, all there, captured, struggling against Kamui Wood's quirk. As Izuku would stand there, Kamui would go in, trying to capture him as well, but he would dodge it. And this is where we would see Kirishima, Todoroki, and Momo all come rushing in, grabbing hold of Bakugo, pulling him out of the League of Villains hideout, escaping with him. And with Bakugo now successfully rescued by some members of Class 1A, they no longer had anyone there where they need to tiptoe around to make sure they didn't hurt. And so instantly, Mount Lady would reach up her foot, going in to slam it down, but right before she could, an explosion would be seen hitting Mount Lady, sending her flying into a skyscraper. All for One standing atop the roof, having just created his gray goopy portal to take him right to where they were. Izuku staring on, seeing All For One laughing, clapping towards the heroes. Well done. I'd have to say I'm pleasantly surprised all of you made it this far. Well, how about we start this fight once and for all? All For One would say, his voice echoing across the city, and this is where we would see All Might unweakened. He didn't fight the Nomu, and so he was stronger than ever, racing in, slamming down his fist with a shockwave, staring towards All For One. You, he would say, looking towards him. Your reign of terror ends now. Pointing towards All For One, he would jump in, slamming fist after fist into All For One's gut, but it didn't seem to be working. He had some sort of shock absorption quirk. Each and every blow was doing nothing. All Might would begin trying anything. Each punch he would send would then be countered by All For One, who was laughing through his respirator. Don't kid yourself, All Might. You knew you could never defeat me. This is it. Your time has come. All Might would look around as skyscraper after skyscraper, building after building would begin falling. Waves of fire, blue cremation fire spreading throughout the city as Nomus would begin appearing out of purple warp gate portals. They had no intention of getting Bakugo to switch sides. No, their intention was to draw a bunch of heroes in, specifically some of the strongest, pulling them in, causing them to have to fight Nomu after Nomu. As the buildings would begin crumbling around them, the heroes would have to fight around falling debris and rubble, and on top of that, they had to save a multitude of civilians, each one numbering in the thousands, civilian after civilian trapped under debris, all while Nomus were fighting through it, effortlessly dodging the falling cinder blocks like it was nobody's business. And so All Might would watch around him as flame walls would grow thicker and thicker, smoke filling the nighttime sky as his hero friends would fall one by one. Izuku would watch this as well. He couldn't believe it. This was terrible. He knew he was a part of the League of Villains, but he wasn't truly a part of it in his heart. He knew he was going to stop it eventually, but right now it felt like there was no stopping it. All Might would yell out, "Go beyond, plus ultra," seething through his teeth, gritting them, squeezing his muscles tight, trying everything he can to defeat All For One. But it was no use. It wasn't doing anything. And finally, this is where Izuku would jump in, betraying the League of Villains. He would tear the top half of his face off, activating his true appearance in an effort to maybe disguise himself just a little bit. Jumping in, fighting side by side with All Might, and All Might could tell. Izuku? Oh, right. You're one of them. Get back. Why are you helping me? Because I'm not one of them. Izuku would say, because I'm a hero in my own way. He would say this once more, fighting against All For One. Each fist and blow All For One would send, Izuku would jump in the way, blocking them, easily countering them with his immense durability, slamming giant onslaughts of fists down towards All For One's body. But it was no use. Eventually, All For One would slam a giant right hook into All Might's weak spot, sending him flying back into a falling building. The rubble would collapse on top of him as Izuku would jump in the way, holding them up, throwing the rubble off, barely managing to keep All Might alive as he would begin phasing in and out of consciousness. Izuku looking towards All for One. He knew that this was it. He knew he had to activate it, but right as he was going to activate his domain expansion, he looked up. All for One was gone. Walking around, he would notice hero after hero on the ground, body after body. He would stare on, looking. Murkrow's body, Endeavor's, Edshot's, Best Jeanist, all of them standing there, dead. He would look over, seeing Mount Lady as well, Nomu's standing atop their corpses, screeching in victory before disappearing back through a warp gate. Staring on, he would shake his head. He had lost. The villains, the League of Villains had won. They had killed countless heroes, and who knew about All Might? And as Izuku stood there, hearing sirens, police helicopters raining overhead, he too would disappear just like All for One had, knowing that he was sure to be captured by the police, and he didn't want to be a part of that. He still had to find them, had to defeat these evil people. And so Izuku would disappear into the rubble, knowing he couldn't be found. From there, we would cut forward to see All Might sitting in a cold hospital room, coughing up blood, weakened in his frail, bony form. Nidai, Gran Torino, and other pro heroes standing around him, asking him if he is alright, and of course he would say yes, flicking through the channels of the TV where he would see it. Villain after hero after hero had been killed. He would stare on, breathless, seeing all of his friends, all of his colleagues dead. We would cut over to the TV. The entirety of the country of Japan is shocked after half of our top 10 heroes had been wiped out in under an hour. As you can see here on this list, many top 10 pro heroes, even the likes of the number 2 hero Endeavor, defeated, and the likes of All Might are still unknown. We still do not know if the symbol of peace is alive. It is a cold, solemn day for Japan. All Might, with shaky hands, would hit the power button on the remote, turning the TV off. He couldn't stare at it for any longer. He would hold his hand up to his mouth, completely shocked. I can't believe this. This is terrible, he would say once more, looking back up towards the TV before he would collapse, falling back into an unconscious state. His entire body was shocked. From here, we would cut forward to see a UA press conference talking. The Hero Commission talking what their next steps were going to do. We lost many righteous men today, men and women. It didn't matter if you were in the top 10. You were still going to die by the hands of the villains. And that is a precedent, an ugly precedent that we cannot have set. We, the Hero Commission, is going to do everything in our power to stop this at once. To stop all of these villains, to bring them to justice. This is a war, and if it means not stopping until their leader's head is sitting on this table, then that is what it means. We will win. Don't let this discourage you. The darkest hour is not upon us just yet. He would say this staring towards the camera, pleading with all of the people on screen that this wasn't over. They were going to win. The heroes were not going to stop until they had won. And so we would now cut forward a couple of months. The war was starting. Everything was pointing towards it. Everyone was preparing. The League of Villains was mounting an army of not only people but Nomus, all while Shigaraki is in a hospital tube, gathering power, turning himself into almost a Nomu, almost a perfect vessel for All for One to take control of. And so, eventually, the time would come. The League of Villains would strike. UA became a safe haven. The world had gone to chaos. Every city, without many pro heroes having been killed, everyone wasn't safe. And Izuku was one of the few people out there trying with all his might to save normal people. But even then, it wasn't enough. There wasn't enough pro heroes to go around anymore. And so, when the League of Villains appeared at UA's doorstep, they came prepared. They stood there, all for one, standing there with Shigaraki looking towards them all. Long, dangly white hair dangling from his head. All for One would laugh at the gates of UA, yelling for them to open it up. Open up, Nezu. I know you're listening. Nezu, along with All Might and Aizawa, would walk to the front of the gate, staring towards All for One. So, All for One, what do you want? You know what I want. I want the world of heroes to crumble. You have made my life a living hell for far too long. And now, now it's your turn. Isn't that right, All Might? He would say, looking towards them as they would look shocked, shaking their heads no. You know we can't do this. You know this isn't how we do things. And All for One would laugh deeply into their faces. Well, at least you hold true to your morals then. However, it will cost you. He would snap his fingers instantly as two Nomus would jump from the side, grabbing hold of All Might's arms. He would squirm, trying with all his muscular might to break free, but he was far too weak. And right as he would try, he would breathe his last breath right on national television, a news helicopter circling around, zooming in on All Might. Shigaraki would plunge a knife right into All Might's weak spot. He would shakily look up, looking back towards Shigaraki, completely shocked. Why? It didn't have to end this way, he would say, falling down to the ground, his body thumping to the floor, dead and lifeless. The villains would laugh, laughing. The symbol of peace was dead as the news helicopter would yell out, All Might, our symbol of hope, of peace, is gone. The villains killed him. Oh, what hope do we have? The darkest hour is truly upon us, he would say, horror outstretched through his words, when all of a sudden we would see Mirio, using One for All, would jump through everything, static controlling him. He would jump through the ground, slamming a punch into one of the Nomus. Heroes, as many as they could gather, including all of the UA hero students, racing out from around a corner. staring on as the final battle would then continue. All for One watching as Shigaraki, with all his powers, would begin easily maneuvering around everybody, fighting with ease. He became a natural machine. Small, low-level heroes getting his way would be killed with the flick of a wrist. He was unstoppable. And as he kept moving around, moving throughout the air, killing hero after hero that came into his way, tried to stop him. Eventually, we would see Mirio jump forth, Aizawa erasing Shigaraki's cork, and where we would see Yue beginning to lift up from the ground. Shigaraki's powers so devastating that the city was beginning to crumble around the campus, the building, the earth cracking and shifting under him. As All for One would laugh, watching as the next All for One user and Shigaraki would begin fighting Mirio. Each and every punch would go and go. Everything was trying and failing. They couldn't do anything. Mirio tried to use his strength, but Shigaraki, having been tested on, his body, his quirks, everything was so much stronger than him. And eventually, it would happen. Mirio would get overpowered, and instantly, Shigaraki would kill him. This was over. Shigaraki had won. And with that, Mirio, One for All's final user, would fall down towards the ground. But Izuku would now jump in. He had heard all of the commotion. He had been in the city trying to stop everybody from being villains, trying to stop all of this acts of villainy. And finally, he had done it. He had managed to get to UA. And from here, he would yell out for Shigaraki to stop. Stop this, Shigaraki, he would yell out. You don't have to be a villain. This isn't who you are, who your destiny says you should be. He would look towards him. I'm not a villain. I was called that name. I was called a freak, a loser for so long. You don't have to be what they called you. Please, Shigaraki, please. He would look back with a shaky expression, looking towards Shigaraki, and Shigaraki would laugh. Oh, how foolish, Izuku, you are. How foolish you could be. You think I'm not a villain, he would say, before Izuku would jump in, grabbing hold of his head, slamming him down to the ground, looking him dead in the eyes. I know deep down you're not a villain. There's still that young Shigaraki somewhere deep in your mind. Just think about it. Think who you were, what he would think of you. And as he would be saying this, Shigaraki's body would begin crying. He was turning. The perfect vessel for All for One was turning to Izuku's side. You're right, he would say, tears streaming down his face. I don't have to be a villain, he would say, looking back towards Izuku. But all of a sudden, a piercing, staticky red cork would come flying out of nowhere, embedding itself right into Shigaraki's skull. All for One, pulling himself forward, would take over Shigaraki's body. Izuku, jumping backwards, would stare on, looking towards what had happened, his face and expression dropping. No, he would yell out, staring on towards him. I can't believe this, he would say, jumping forward, reaching out his arms out towards All For One, who would slap him across the battlefield. Weakened heroes all throughout watching this occur. Izuku, standing up, would look on towards All For One. I see how this is going to be. Izuku would say, jumping towards him, slamming a black flash into All For One's gut before slamming another one and then another one. Bakugo coming up behind Izuku, sending an explosion into All For One as well. He had realized Izuku was fighting with them, not against them, and so he tried to help. But yet, this wasn't working. All For One had taken over Shigaraki's body, and somehow it seemed like he was turning into himself, turning younger. This was horrific. This was weird. It made no sense. This wasn't how it was supposed to be, how things were, how they were supposed to play out. But it was different now. They were happening, and they had to deal with it. And as Izuku would stand there, looking towards All For One, seeing him get younger and younger, he would realize, maybe there is no other way. He would open his mouth wide, small hands appearing within it, activating self-embodiment of perfection. Hands beginning to scroll out from the ground, giant hands creating all these different symbols before Izuku would look up towards the sky, the hands clasping around him. All For One would look around in shock. It seemed like he was in space almost, but there was a web of hands keeping him down on the ground. He would look towards Izuku as Izuku would laugh. Well, this is sad how it played out. All For One, Shigaraki, whoever you are. But I suppose it played out however it was supposed to be. So, there's a dark pit in hell waiting for you, he would say, looking towards All For One, as, without the need to even touch him, he would manipulate his soul, reshaping All For One's soul in a grotesque and painful way as his screams would ring out throughout the domain expansion. Izuku staring on towards All For One with a frown before closing the expansion. All For One's body falling to the floor. He was dead. And as Izuku stood there, falling to his knees, the final battle was over. And of course, he had to be arrested. Although All For One, the top final villain, the final battle, the leader of the other regime, was dead, they had to bring Izuku in. They had to arrest him. And so, he would be arrested, where he would be brought to a public trial. The Hero Commission spearheading the prosecution. As Izuku would be sitting there, all of a sudden, something would change. They would stand up, looking towards the recording. It was airing on national television. Due to Izuku's Midoriya, due to his immense contributions to our society, destroying that villain of All For One when no one else could. We, the Hero Commission, are pardoning Izuku Midoriya and would hereby instate him, asking him to become a hero for us. Izuku would look back towards the prosecutor. This wasn't something they could do, but I guess the Hero Commission made their own rules. And as he looked towards them, a shaky expression, tears falling out of his eyes, his dream was becoming a reality. He was becoming a hero. Looking back towards him, he would smile. His mother, watching on national television, would look back, tears streaming down her face as well. Her baby boy, Izuku, had fulfilled his dream. He was going to become a hero and help people. And from here, we would see a new world of heroism emerge. It didn't matter what kind of quirk you had, you could become a hero, and Izuku proved that. Although he could kill someone with the slightest touch, reshaping their soul, killing them in a grotesque manner, he still proved himself worthy as a hero. And that was what everyone should aspire to be. And with the top 10 wide open as well, it seems no-brainer that Izuku would end up holding down that top number 1 spot. And that is where, what if Deku had Mahito's powers, or what if Deku had idol transfiguration, not sure what title I'm going to use yet, comes to an end. I hope you all did enjoy this video. It wasn't even supposed to be 2 hours long. I was only going to make it around an hour and 20 minutes, but it was just so fun to record. I just decided to keep on going. So I hope you all do enjoy that. I thank you all for watching once again, and please, please, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help this channel out immensely. And with that being said, goodbye.